We are blessed to have a lot of great men and women that teach the Word of God here. We are truly blessed. And I am truly blessed as a pastor that, especially in situations that I've been in, medical, health wise, that I've had a team around me to help take the load off. And quite candidly, even if medically I'm in great shape, I think it's good that you are exposed to the team that God has put together here. And so one of them is going to be teaching tonight, and that's Miss Christy Harrison. She's going to do a great job. She's been pulling double duty this week. She taught the youth this past Sunday morning, and now she's going to teach us old folks tonight. Would you let her know how much you appreciate her as she comes and gives you the word tonight?
How are y'all today? I'm going to title my teaching tonight is A Test and a Testimony. It seems like we've all been going through some tests. Get my papers out. It says, in both the Old and New Testament, the words translated test means to prove by trial. Therefore, when God tests his children, his purpose is to prove our faith is real. Not that God needs to prove it to himself since he knows all things, but he is proving to us our real faith, that we are truly his children and that no trial will overcome our faith. You got to believe and have a testimony. And a testimony is when you take a test. Now, when God gives you a test, it is not to show God how much he knows, because he knows everything. I have my testimony things down. Oh, right, here it is. I found it. Never mind. I thought it left me somewhere. Scholars have analyzed the concept of testimony in the Bible, and it's significant. Then they note that testimony enables personal expression, sharing of experience of divine intervention, and inspiring others to have faith. Furthermore, testimony serves as a form of encouragement and validation for believers in affirming that God is actively working in our lives. When you give a testimony, you need to remember who you're glorifying. Because a lot of time people get up and they glorify the devil. You don't need to do that. You need to glorify God. And then test comes in all different kinds of forms. Why does teachers give tests at school? To see how much you know, if you're learning. You know, she may have to change something if you're not learning. And has anybody ever had to take a test over again? Yeah. I just didn't understand it. Now, what's the worst kind of test at school? Yes, that's it, a pop quiz. I hated those two words. If it was math, I didn't care. I loved math. Math just was my favorite subject, and I just loved math. But if it was science, I would just get under the table, you know. Science was really hard for me, but everybody's different, and everybody has weaknesses and strengths and everything. And it says, have you ever made a test and that you had to do over and over and over before you learn it? Now, that's the way it is with God sometimes. He will give you a test, and if you fail it, he is a very good God. He'll give you a time to redo the test and maybe pass it the second time. Now, I've had some tests that God's gave me that I had to redo them 4 or 5 times. So, it's just that's the way it is. And it says that in James, in the New King Version, it says, "Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires." God won't tempt you to do something bad. Now, if you're tempted to do something bad, that's the devil. Because God will put you through tests to make you stronger. It's like when you go to the gym and you work out and you start picking up those dumbbells or walking or riding the bike, you may be sore the next day and you have to go back. But if you keep going back, you're going to get stronger. Now, that's the way a test is also. The more tests you have and the more you keep going and trusting and believing in God, the stronger you're going to get. And I was praying one time, and I've had a hard time sometimes financially. I don't know if any of y'all's ever had a hard time financially, but I always paid my tithes. I've always been faithful. But sometimes I say, God, where's my running over basket, because I paid my tithes. And I never got an answer. But one day the Lord spoke to me so clear. He said, the reason why I've allowed you to struggle in some of these areas is because I wanted you to be a woman of faith. I wanted you to trust me, not your husband, because he was a surveyor, and when it rained, he didn't work. If it was too cold, sometimes they didn't work. And so I got where I would look at my bills, how much money I need the next week, and I would pray for God to give him that much work to supply my need, and God never let me down. You'll have to learn to lean on Jesus. That's a test, and I had to take that test several times because I always was leaning on my husband or me if I could make more money or if I could do something. But I learned to lean on Jesus because he's the author and finisher of everything. He can take care of us. And in a testimony that's for our children, when 1 year up here at the high school, they was having a gospel singing, and my mama wanted me to go with her, and I did. And when I got there, I was listening to the music, and I closed my eyes and was just meditating. And God gave me a vision of my son standing in front of the church with his hands lifted up. Now, it was 6 years before that happened, after when I had the vision and when it happened. But I don't know where Brother and Sister Pickens was that Sunday, but I think they maybe went on vacation or was at some kind of pastor's retreat or something. But my son came to church that Sunday. He had told me the night before that he had to have a change. And when he came in, we was in Sunday school, and I had Chelsea, she was my baby, granddaughter, and she was getting active, so I took her down to the nursery and come back, and he was gone. I thought, oh, no, why is he gone? But somebody said, he's at the altar. He said he couldn't wait for the preaching to come and go. He had to get things right then. And he stood up in the altar, just like my vision that the Lord had showed me at that 6 years earlier, him getting saved. Now, during that 6 years, was I tested? I know one night I was praying for my son, and the devil, you could hear the devil's voice come to you sometimes too, and he said, I'm fixing to kill your son tonight drinking and driving. And that was kind of scary. But then the Lord spoke to me on the other side. He said, you going to believe me or you going to believe the devil? He said, did I not tell you I was going to save your son? And so I said, I believe you, God, and I trust you, God, and I'm not going to believe what the devil says. Now, when he got saved, and one night on the way home from church, he showed me 3 different places alongside the road that he passed out drunk driving. But the devil could not kill him because God had a hedge around about him. We have tests that we go through, and the quicker you learn, when you're going through something, you need to say, God, what do I need to learn out of this test that I might be able to help someone, or I might be able to be a testimony to help people that their children are going through drugs or alcohol. And I tell them, you keep on praying, and God will bring them through, and he will save them. And with some of the people in the Bible that were tested and they came out victorious, one of them is Abraham, which is in Genesis 22 and 1 through 19. And it talks about when Abraham finally had his son that God promised him. And one day when he got up, the Lord spoke to me, said, I want you to take your son, your only son Isaac, and I want you to take him and sacrifice him to me. And the next morning, they said Abraham got up early in the morning. He didn't argue with God. He knew it was God because he knew God's voice. He got his wood. He got 2 servants to go with him and Isaac, and they went to where God told him to go. And on the way up that mountain, Isaac said, Father, we've got the wood, we've got the ropes, we've got the fire and everything, but where is the sacrifice? Abraham said, God will provide. You got to trust God to provide when you're going through something bad. And when he got up there at the top of the mountain, now Isaac by then, he was big enough that I believe he could have maybe took his daddy on, because his daddy was 100 years old when he had him, you know. But he didn't. He obeyed his father. I think maybe Abraham was talking to me and saying, now, Isaac, God told me to do this. But God told me also, through you, I'm going to have a great lineages. And I'm going to have all kinds of grandkids and great-grandkids through you. So I know that God's going to take care of you. See, Abraham learned his lesson and passed the test so many times that he knew God would take care of his son this time. And so when he ties him up, he lays him on the wood there to start. So it was fixing to start to cut his throat so he could have the sacrifice. And the Lord spoke and said, Abraham, Abraham, don't lay a hand on the lad. He said that I know that you love me more than you love anything else. And you have passed this test. And he said, and then over there on the side was a ram that was locked up into the trees or something over there. It was there. God sent it, and they sacrificed it, and they went back home. And then there was Ruth. I love the book of Ruth. You know, her mother-in-law was going back home. And Ruth and Oprah was going to go with her. And they got halfway, and Naomi said, I can't have more children. Even if I could, would you wait 25 years for them to grow up, you know? Go back to your mama and daddy. But Ruth says, no, I am not going back. That I love you, I'll live where you live, I'll die where you die, and I'll honor your God, that I love your God. Now, the other one turned around and went back home, but Ruth stayed true to her word. She was going through a test. She could have went back, and Naomi would try to get her to go back. But she said, I believe one of the reasons that she didn't go back because she had fallen in love with Naomi's God. Because she said, your God is my God. And in her religion, they would sacrifice their children to a fire and they'd take them and burn them up. She didn't want any part of that. She wanted a good God that didn't demand children's lives to be killed or demand you to do stuff that you shouldn't be doing. She wanted a real God, a God that would love her and protect her and be with her. And when they get there, they have to go in. Naomi's house was still there. Her land's still there. Because at that time, you couldn't sell your land. You could release it out for a while, but you couldn't sell it because it was a family land. And so while she was there and Naomi and Ruth was cleaning up the house and getting things ready, but they didn't have nothing to eat much. They was poor. They didn't have much money. And so Ruth said, I'm going to go out and glean. I'm going to get us something to eat. And God put her in favor because of her doing what God would have her do and take care of Naomi. Boaz come along. And we know through her the blessing that she got, the testimony that she could have later on was that I had the grandson of King David. You know, you don't know when you're going through something bad how much God can bless you. And Esther, Queen Esther, I don't know if she really wanted to be the queen, but they got her. She had to go. She didn't have a choice about it. Sometimes we go through problems that we don't have a choice. Just bad things happen sometimes. I don't know if anybody's in here not had something bad happen to you, but I don't believe anybody in here's not had something bad happen. But she went she found favor with the king, and she became queen. And then her uncle comes and he said, they're fixing to kill all the Jews. And she was scared. She said, well, what can I do about that, you know? I can't even go see the king unless he tells me to come, and I'm not seen him in over a month. But no, her uncle kept going on and on. So she finally said, have them fast 3 days, and we'll fast 3 days here. No matter what happens, if I live, I live. If I die, I die. And Mordecai had told her, he said, for such a time as this, sometimes things happen for us to be there for such a time, to do a mighty work. And we know that she went, and the story, we know that how she went into the king, and he didn't kill her. Matter of fact, he was pleased to see her. She invited to the banquet. But the king, once you made a rule or a law, he couldn't break that. So he couldn't stop what was going to go forth. So he made a new law that the Jews could fight back on this certain day. And the Jews won, and they got a lot of plunder and stuff. And then later on, the king and queen, when Nehemiah went before them, he was a cupbearer, and he told them that he needed to go and build the walls back around Jerusalem. And they found, because of the favor that the Jews had found in the queen, Esther, and the king, he was able to go, and they paid him and gave him money, and they paid him while he was there to do a work that God had called him to do. When God puts you to the test, sometimes he'll reward you while you're going through that. They tried to convince Nehemiah that he wasn't in God's will, that he could not build those walls back, but he never listened to him. He kept working day and night. And when they say, oh, you just do this, and, you know, I'll help you if you come into the temple and do so and so. And he'd say, no, I can't do that. You just go on your way. And they said, well, won't you let us help you? He said, no, you are not a Jew, and you are not helping us. God's people will build this wall back. And they got it built back in record time. And they was able to have the doors put on the gates again, so just anybody couldn't come in and fight that.